And next, I want to tell you guys a secret that really helped me pass CFA Level II. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, we will be going over how you can ace your CFA Level II exam without studying more than you absolutely have to. You guys seem to really like my video on all my best tips for CFA Level I, so I figured I also wanted to do a video dedicated to CFA Level II. And while this video does focus on CFA Level II, a lot of these tips can naturally also be applied to both Level I and Level III. Also, if you are new to the channel, hi, my name is Pearl. I took my CFA Level I exam in May 2021, and then I took my CFA Level II exam in November 2021, and I scored very close to top 10 percentile for both of them. And then I took my CFA Level III exam in February 2023, not so long ago. So I'm currently awaiting the results for that one. So please cross your fingers for me. Other than that, I am 25 years old, turning 26 very soon, and I work as a financial analyst in renewable energy investments. And prior to that, I worked with hedge funds. But now, let's get into all the tips. I also put some timestamps in the description in case you want to skip to a certain part of the video. So my first tip is to be smart about how much time you set aside for studying for the exam. This entails to be mentally prepared for what you're about to embark on, and also to start your CFA Level II studies early enough, but not too early. Also remember that when you're starting your studies for CFA Level II, you're already at a huge advantage compared to when you started your studies for CFA Level I, because now you have already successfully studied for and completed a CFA exam, so you kind of know the setup and you also know all the topics. So there will just be way fewer surprises along the way. So believe in yourself because you can do this. That being said, though, Level 2 is much harder than Level 1, in my opinion, and also in many other people's opinions. So just be mentally prepared that you probably will need to spend more time studying for Level 2 than you did for Level 1. Personally, I spent around 2 months studying for Level 1, and I think close to 2.5 months studying for Level 2. And I definitely crammed very, very hard for both, and it was not fun at all. It really wasn't. Outside of my full-time job and my CFA studies, I basically had no free time while I was studying for these exams. So keep that in mind. If you also like to cram, it's definitely possible to do it in a very short period of time, like 2 months or 3 months, but I wouldn't recommend it because the curriculum is very, very big for Level 2 and is also more difficult than for Level 1. So I recommend setting aside more time than that. I think if I had to do my CFA Level 2 exam over again, I would probably set aside 3.5 months to study. But again, that is because I like to cram. But if you're a person that likes to spread out the studying over a longer period of time so that you don't have to study as much every day, definitely do that. And if you like a setup like that more, maybe setting aside 4, 5, or 6 months to study for Level 2 would make more sense. Especially if you have a very demanding job or a family that requires a lot of your time, make sure to set aside extra time for your CFA Level 2 studies. Just to elaborate, I think spending anywhere from 2 to 6 months studying for Level 2 makes sense, but if you start spending much longer than that, you should be aware that you probably will need to spend more time in the end, right before the exam, on reviewing because you will have forgotten more of the material by then. Most people that pass CFA Level 2 report that they spend around 300 hours or a bit more to study for the exam. And while I think 300 hours maybe is set a little bit high, I think this is a really good benchmark to use when you do plan out your studies. Also, I would recommend looking at your CFA Level 1 results and see how much you passed by, because if you only passed by a little bit, I would recommend setting aside more time to study for Level 2. The final thing I recommend that you consider before deciding how much time you want to set aside to study for Level 2 is that Level 2 is notorious for being very, very quantitative, way more than Level 1 and Level 3. So Level 2 has a lot of formulas and calculations and stuff, but on the other hand, Level 2 has slightly less theory. And so depending on what you prefer and what you find the easiest, so that's just another thing to take into consideration. My second tip is to think about your overall CFA Level 1 study experience. So ask yourself if the study materials that you used for Level 1 made it easy for you to understand the material in an efficient manner. And if they did, by all means, stick to the same materials provided for Level 2. But if they didn't, consider trying out another materials provider for Level 2. Personally, I have only used CFA's own online learning ecosystem to study for all three exams. And so this online learning ecosystem is the one that is provided to you for free after you register for a CFA exam. And I have honestly been really happy with it. I think it's been super easy and intuitive. And I think the practice questions on there are great. But I will say that the readings sometimes can be very, very long, but it does work well for me. So that's basically been the only materials that I have used for all my CFA exams. And so when it comes to study materials that you can buy, I don't personally have any experience with it, but I have linked an article in the description down below with all the top materials providers for CFA exams. Also, if you do want to buy your study materials for your CFA exam and you also have a full time job in finance, I definitely recommend asking your employer if they want to pay for them because chances are they will say yes, and that will save you probably between $500 to $1,000. And so, definitely worth asking. Also, if you haven't already, definitely also ask your employer if they are willing to pay for your CFA exams. Most employers, if you work in finance, will say yes, and it also just can't hurt to ask. And my third tip is to analyze your CFA Level 1 topic results. So I recommend pulling up your CFA Level 1 score report with all your scores and all the different topics, and then look at what topics you performed the best in and also what topics you didn't perform very well in. Also look at whether or not your scores were sort of very different topic by topic or if they were more or less the same in all topics. Personally, I scored very high in some topics like equities, corporate finance, ethics, alternatives, but I scored very low in other topics like derivatives and financial statement analysis. And so just familiarize yourself with your strengths and weaknesses because that will help you a lot going into your CFA Level 2 studies. And so in your CFA Level 2 study schedule, make sure that you set aside more time to study for the topics that you generally struggle with, and maybe set aside less time for the topics that you generally find pretty easy. Personally, I was definitely taken aback by how much more difficult derivatives become on level 2 compared to level 1. And my score in derivatives on level 2 was horrific. And I was also very surprised by how much you actually need to learn and remember in financial statement analysis. Like, it was just, yeah, it was very, very rough, I will say. And I think especially financial statement analysis is also a topic that I just don't personally find too interesting. And so that made it even more difficult for me to study for it. And so I think just being aware of your own weaknesses and strengths going into the exam will help you a lot. It can also really help you set realistic expectations for how you should score on certain practice questions within different topics. For example, in the topics that you're good in, maybe you want to set a high score expectation of 80% or above, whereas in the topics that you're not so good in, maybe you want to set a pretty low score expectation of 60%. That's what I did personally. And yeah, my scores definitely varied a lot by topic. And this brings me to the next tip. Remember that you don't need to understand and know everything. And so we don't know the exact number, but I think the consensus is that if you score 70% or above correct on a CFA exam, you're pretty much guaranteed to pass. And often you can get away with scoring even less than 70%. At least that's what a lot of people think. And so obviously this means that you can get almost one in every three questions incorrect and still pass the exam. And while this is very obvious, I think it's important to remind yourself of this because when you are studying something, you have tried to understand it several times and you just can't just let it go and move on, because you can have so many holes in your knowledge and still pass these exams. And so don't get hung up on things that you find super difficult. Just move on. Personally, I scored almost in the top 10 percentile on CFA Level 2, and I did score really high in certain topics like ethics and equity and alternatives and corporate finance and stuff. But like I mentioned before, I also was absolutely destroyed by derivatives. You can't tell what the exact percentage you scored in a certain topic is, right? But I think if I had to guess, it was maybe 30-40% or something in derivatives that I scored. So extremely low, right? And I think my financial statement analysis score, which is a very big topic on the exam too, right? Again, I don't know the exact percentage because CFA doesn't disclose that, but I would guess from my score report that I maybe scored 50 or 55% or something like that correct on that. So also a really low score, but I still passed by so much. And so all of this is just to remind you that hey, it's fine if you struggle with certain things in the curriculum, you can still definitely pass the exam. And my next piece of advice is to be aware of the differences in questions between level 1 and level 2. So the good times from level 1, where each question was like a couple sentences long, are over because level 2 consists exclusively of Vignette questions. Sorry if I mispronounced that, but basically Vignette questions are maybe half a page or a bit more of text that are separated into different paragraphs. And then at the end of all the text are some different questions, maybe 4 plus minus, that all relate back to that body of text. It sounds worse than it is though. Not always, but for the most part, in my experience from doing practice questions and stuff, the first paragraph usually has the answer for the first question, and then the second paragraph usually has the answer for the second question, and so on. And so once you get used to this, the Vignette questions really are not more difficult than the questions on level 1, in my opinion. And another big benefit is that on level 2, you have more time per question than you did on level 1. And so personally, I was in a lot of time pressure when I was doing my level 1 exam. Like, I think the first half of the exam, I finished with like 2 seconds to spare, which was just horrifying. But on level 2, I honestly had a lot of time to spare on both the first half and the second half, at least 20 minutes per section. And most of that was just because like you have more time per question on level 2. And yeah, honestly, you have to read a little bit more in the level 2 questions, but not that much more. And so yeah, don't fear the Vignette questions. They're not as bad as they sound. And next, for my final tip, I want to tell you guys a secret that really helped me pass CFA Level 2. Ethics is easy points. And I'm not sure that everyone will agree with me on this one, but hear me out. And so ethics is once again one of the largest topics on CFA Level 2, just like it is for all 3 CFA exams. And so there are a lot of points up for grabs here. Some people also say that your ethics score matters more than any other topic score in the CFA exams. For example, if your overall score is slightly below the minimum passing score, but your ethics score is really high, some people say that the CFA Institute will still let you pass that exam. Of course, I don't know if that's true or not, but regardless, ethics is such a big topic on the CFA Level 2 exam, and all you need to know to get a really high score is some rules. And while a lot of the rules intuitively make sense, still make sure that you read the rules, okay, guys? I have talked to many people that have studied for level 2 or any of the CFA exams, and they haven't really spent time studying for ethics because I think there's just like maybe a lack of respect for the ethics topic on the CFA exams because it's not like as quantitative as many of the other topics. And, you know, I think if you have that opinion, I think that's totally fair. Okay. I think we can all debate what topics is the most useful. But when it comes to what topic is the most useful in terms of passing the CFA exam, I think that goes to ethics because it's a pretty easy topic compared to all the others. You don't need to know formulas, you just need to know some rules. So read the rules, do a ton of practice questions because once you have done a lot of practice questions, you'll be able to recognize certain questions and pretty easily identify the correct answer. And it's just going to help your overall score on CFA Level 2 so much. And to make things even better, the ethics curriculum on CFA Level 2 is almost the same as the ethics curriculum on CFA Level 1. And so if you scored well in ethics on CFA Level 1, you will probably also score well in ethics on CFA Level 2. And spoiler alert, most of the ethics curriculum is also going to be the same on CFA Level 3. And so you might as well learn ethics now rather than later. Personally, while I don't think that ethics is the most interesting topic, I actually enjoyed studying for it because so many of the topics in level 2 are so quantitative, there's so much math in them, and they're kind of similar in that regard, whereas ethics really stands out because it's like so not that. It's just a bunch of rules and words and like, you know, it's not all the formulas. And while I do love numbers a lot, I actually enjoyed getting a break from all of that while I was studying for level 2 when I studied ethics. So yeah, that was all my top tips for how you can ace your CFA Level 2 exam. I hope you found them helpful. And if you did, please consider to like and subscribe. And also, I would love to hear about your CFA experiences in the comments down below. And also, if you have any questions, CFA related or not, please feel free to ask them in the comments because I love engaging with you guys. And other than that, I just want to wish you best of luck on your CFA journey. You got this. And then I will see you again very soon in the next video. Bye, guys.